Hello YouTube community, my name is the Jackhammer13 and it is currently 11:48 p.m. on Wednesday night. I'm being a little bit quiet because obviously it is late at night and I want to make sure that this video is still done, but sadly because I didn't get a chance to watch Dark until today, didn't get a chance to do this video until right now. I just finished Dark and I'm going to try and make this a little bit quicker because I would like to get to bed as soon as possible. I'm rather tired. And overall, I don't really particularly want to have to edit a whole lot, so this will also come out unedited. Probably going to be the same way for most of these in the future, unless I change the time. I've considered doing that. I've considered changing Thursdays' times to better reflect my ability to edit this, considering that I have If My Heart Had Wings already done. So I might just do that at the 9 o'clock slot, put this at the 7 o'clock slot in the future. But for this week, because I'm already up, I'm already recording it, we're going to do it this way. I'm going to try and be really quick. You know how I am. I'm not able to do that all the time, but here we go. So beginning with Dark, that happened yesterday, Taz begins it off by saying that he's not going to be addressing his business relationship with Brian Cage, and I think that that's a very good way to start it off. It makes a lot of sense for why they didn't mention it, because obviously it probably hadn't happened with a lot of the stuff that had happened. Going into this show, I think a lot of the matches were pre-recorded, so I think that was smart. I also think that it's smart that they sort of build it up for more of a Dynamite type thing as well. First match is Alex Reynolds and John Silver versus the Natural Nightmares of QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes, and Ron Reynolds and Alex Silver don't have numbers, which I think is an interesting strategy for the Dark Order, considering everyone else does, including Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, who are 1 and 2. So I don't know what's going on with that, but whatever. QT throughout the majority of this match is distracted by Allie. She's eating an apple. I have no clue if the apple gives him power or if he's just distracted because she's pretty. I'm thinking it's because she's pretty. This likes to be setting up something between the Natural Nightmares and Butcher and Blade, but we'll see that Butcher and Blade also have a little bit of heat with the Young Bucks later on Dynamite. So throughout the match, Silver and Reynolds seem to impress me pretty decently. They for the most part have been a enhancement talent team, but they're definitely showing a lot more aggression in these past few matches I've seen them in, and I think that that's pretty good. I think that overall that's going to serve them well. In the end, though, the match ends with the Natural Nightmares winning in combination of hitting Destroyer with Dustin, and then QT hits the QT Cutter and gets the 1, 2, 3. This match is a B-, purely because it gives a little bit of storyline for Natural Nightmares, and Butcher, the Bunny, and the Blade could possibly lead to something down the line. I have no clue if it will or not, but the fact that it was at least thrown in there gives it a little bit more than just a typical squash match rating. Plus, Reynolds and Reynolds and Silver are a little bit more than just enhancement talent. Though that's their main role that they've played thus far, there's storyline being built to make them a little bit more of a formidable tag team. A B tag team, but still more formidable. The next match was Michael Nakazawa versus Brandon Cutler. And I had heard that this match was going to be one of the best matches on the card. And because of that, I went into it thinking a lot more about it than what ended up being shown. It wasn't a bad match by any regards, but I'll explain in a second why. So Nakazawa throughout the match doesn't use his oil because both Remsburg and Cutler take the oil away from him and throw it into the crowd. I think that was very smart, and it allows Nakazawa to show what he can do without the oil, and it proves to be pretty successful. He can do a lot still. He ended up ripping his gear as well. I hope that they get that fixed. Brandon Cutler's probably not happy about that. His wife likely made that gear. Anyway, Cutler got busted up somewhere during this match. I'm guessing it was either from the strikes before he took a spear, or because the spear, when he took it, he rolled on the mat and might have got an abrasion or something that cut him open. Not entirely certain, but he was bleeding through the ending portions of the match. Cutler seems to be getting the lead in the match, seems to be taking advantage, but he stays outside a bit too long with Nakazawa. Nakazawa pushes him away at the 8 count, He can't get back in before the count of 10, and the first ever count out in AEW history happens. It's surprising that it happens on a Dark instead of on a Dynamite. That was a very interesting way to do that, especially since it's Brandon Cutler, who, you could give him a pinfall loss, you could give him a submission loss, but no, they decided to go with a count out loss. I think that's really interesting. It also really builds into the storyline between him and Peter Avalon, because it looked like he had the chance to win the match, and he might have almost made it into the ring before the 10 count, but didn't get Remsburg to actually count him as safe. So that was a very interesting storyline. He then goes on commentary for the next match, which Peter Avalon, when he came out and did his shtick with Cutler, saying oh, you're a loser, and he's just like, well, you're just as bad of a loser as I am, and you'll prove it in this match, kind of thing. So Cutler's on commentary for this match, Peter Avalon versus Jungle Boy. But before I get to that, Cutler versus Nakazawa. It was a fun match, but it was short, so only can give it a B grade. It wasn't a squash match, so therefore it doesn't get the obligatory C plus to B minus range. C minus to B minus range, rather. But anyway, Peter Avalon versus Jungle Boy with Cutler on commentary. There was a lot of the typical lucha style from Jungle Boy, a lot of the ground-based heel work that Peter Avalon's been known for, so it was a standard match between the two, doing a lot of their good stuff that they typically do. But Jungle Boy really impressed in this, more so than usual even, because he had some amazing work on the ropes, better than I've seen him do in a while. And he had this one DDT, for example, that looked really good. He had his arm drag, looked amazing this time around, and it always looks good, but it looks amazing with this one. Avalon hits the martinis and only gets a 2, so that was a very tense moment, because I was like, does Avalon actually win this match? Good lord, that could mean a lot of things for his future, but it's obviously not going to happen because it's Jungle Boy. Also, the book that Leva Bates had was called Dinosaur Good Night, and I am very impressed by the attention to detail of that. However, I'm not impressed with the kiss that Marco Stunt gave to her. That's very outdated, old-fashioned kind of stuff. I'm not a fan of that. Please get that out of my matches. I don't want to see that, even on Dark. I understand that there's a bit more of comedy stuff, but that's not my style of comedy anymore. It's old, it's outdated. Get rid of it. Anyway, Jungle Boy hits the SGS, or applies the SGS, which is his finishing move that he can use to make people tap. It's amazing looking, and it looks very devastating, but it takes a while to set up, and ends up getting the win. So that was a pretty good match, but even though it was better than the prior match because of the more predictable outcome and because of the kiss portion of it, I can't give it a B+. I would like to, but I sadly can't. If it was just the predictable outcome, or if it was just the kiss, it would have been a B+ easy. But because both of those things occurred, I cannot justify giving it a better grade than the match before it, even though content-wise in the ring it was. Does that bode well for Avalon's future, considering that he technically had a better match overall, but storyline things and the fact that he was going up against a more adversarial opponent change that? Who knows? But give a B to blue for those matches. The next match was Serpentico versus Christopher Daniels, which could have been a very interesting match if it wasn't for me being so tired. One of the interesting things that I did find out throughout it was that Serpentico is actually John Cruz, who was also on the show. He had a match against Luther last week, and I never would have known that because they have two very different styles entirely. I wanted to grade this a little bit higher because of that fact. I was just like, well, Serpentico is actually really amazing if that's the case, because that takes a lot of guts to go for two different styles, to be able to pull off two different styles, and to have two different interactions with people entirely with your personas, and I think that that's pretty neat. However, because I didn't take that into consideration with his last match, I don't feel it's right to do it with here as well. Eventually the match ends with Christopher Daniels hitting the BME. It was a squash match, so I sort of tuned myself out of it, aside from looking up Serpentico stuff, but it was a very good match altogether. All told, Serpentico has a lot of upside to him. Again, a lot of the enhancement talent that they brought in has upside, and it looks like they could do more in the future if they were given opportunities. but because of the current situations where they're going up against quote-unquote main roster guys, they're not likely to win, and I would be surprised if any of them do. Alan Angels would be the first I could see it happening with, and he could have like a match against OC or something where that happens. I would prefer him to beat somebody like Peter Avalon or to beat somebody like Brandon Cutler. Him and Brandon Cutler would have an amazing match. But regardless of that, we'll move forward. The next match was John Skyler and Brady Pierce, two new guys who haven't been shown up in at all, versus Sonny Kiss and Joey Janela. I like the combination of Sonny Kiss and Joey Janela. I think that they're a very good tag team, and I think that they have a lot of potential to do more together in the future. Even though I think that they are also both very good on their own. But it's interesting to see Joey Janela be tagged up with a lot of different people. Tagged up with a Private Party, tagged up with Sonny Kiss. Just interesting to me, I guess, is the best way to put it. I'd rather him be a singles wrestler, but they do what they got to do, I guess. Sonny Kiss had an amazing forearm during the match. It's like a rolling forearm that looked like it hit hard. I think he hit it on Brady Pierce, and Jeebus, was it good. Then Skyler and Pierce also impressed me throughout the match because they had a lot of cohesion when they were going up and like teeing off on Joey Janela. For enhancement talent, it's always good to see them being able to fight back, being able to have some sort of life, so that you think, okay, well, maybe even if they are people that we know aren't going to win, quote unquote, they have the chance to do so, and they did a very good job of that. Their selling was also fairly decent. They had interesting, albeit not my favorite style of, I guess, character work is the best way to put it. I don't think that they were amazing with that during this match, but I did see flashes of what could be good from that. Anyway, Janela and Kiss have a bunch of tag team stuff that they do together, and eventually get the win. They have like the Janela diving underneath Sonny Kiss's legs to take out one guy, and then them working together to hit the final maneuver for the ending, that kind of stuff. Squash match again. It was a good match though, but still only a C+ because of the squash match stipulation. The next match was Tony Donato and Fabo Andre versus Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc, and the match itself was okay, I guess, but it was really the character work from everybody involved that I really liked about this. Havoc was asking Knox if he had any of Fabu's face in his teeth because he was biting him earlier, and during that, Penelope Ford took the time to attack Fabu while he was outside. They did a field goal kick, which is becoming one of my favorite moves that they do, and it went wide left this time. I think it was wide right the time before. Either way, it was the opposite direction of what Knox said the last time, and I love that. I'm hoping that eventually Knox will say, yes, it's good, and everyone can rejoice. Regardless, somewhere in all of this, I guess, through the biting, Fabu started bleeding. He ended up tagging out, and I don't think that they meant for that to happen at any point. He never came back in for the rest of the match, if I recall. Donati had a hot tag, and it was a really nice misdirection suplex. It looked like he was going for the suplex in one way, and then he swirled him around, grabbed him on the other side, and then moved his arm behind him in a very awkward angle. It looked like a very devastating move, and he did it rather quickly, so it didn't even seem like it was an unintentional way of doing it. It looked like that's what he had planned the entire time. Very nice. He ends up getting up into the corner at some point, and Jimmy Havoc does a rising uppercut, but he yells out "Shoryuken," and I love that. It was great. The match ends with the new finishing move that these two are using, Sabian and Havoc, that is, and it's basically a dropkick into a Michinoku driver, and I'm hereby calling the team Savic from now on, so I don't have to say Sabian and Havoc. But yeah, so apparently this was paying homage to Marty Scurll and Zack Sabre Jr. They had a team called the Leaders of the New School that I never got to see anything of, sadly, and they did that as their finishing move, so that's pretty neat. This was a good showing by the enhancement guys. I really enjoyed what they did throughout this match. The amount of interesting stuff that happened character work wise as well, despite it being a squash match, puts it up to the highest level of that. It's a B- because it seems to really get me into Havoc and Sabian's character. It made me like them more as a tag team than I originally had. Last week it was not really my thing. This week, this match in particular helped me think that they had fairly decent partnership together, and I'm looking forward to see what they do. Next match was Grimm versus Wardlow, and Grimm looks pretty good. I think he could be really strong against anyone other than Wardlow, or like Brody Lee or Lance Archer or whatever. MJF cuts like miniature promos throughout the entire match, and I think that's hilarious. It's very clear that Wardlow's going to win this match, so it's obviously going to get a C+ grade. But there was a really interesting thing where Wardlow debuted a new finishing move. It's basically like he has the guy at a chokeslam up on the top rope, drops them and just knees them in the face. He also F10'd Grimm, which, okay, damn dude. Anyway, squash match, very easy to call. They didn't really make it seem like Grimm had a shot, which is sad because I think anybody else that he went against you could have a better match with. He got the tough luck of the draw here, so C+ grade is the grade. The next match was Lee Johnson versus Colt Cabana, and Lee's becoming one of my favorites simply because of his theme music, but he also has like really decent in-ring stuff that he's done. And in the beginning of this, he made me love him even more because he started singing Colt Cabana's theme. You could see him like mouthing Colt Cabana, Colt Cabana. I'm not singing it properly, but you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, Cabana reminds me in this match, and in all of his matches, but in this one in particular, I thought about it, of my grandfather, because he like gives you hope that you have chances of beating him. Back when I was a kid, he and I used to like wrestle and all that. He was trying to teach me how to use my reflexes and to basically not be a wimp. So like when somebody's putting their hands on you, tickling you, or like play fighting you or whatever, you're able to find ways out of it. He still does that every now and again, which is odd, but it's how we've interacted for so many years now, 20 years now, I think it is, and I don't see it happening, like going away anytime soon. But he reminds me of that, Cabana does. He gives you the hope, and then he takes every advantage he can to make you beaten, and that's pretty cool. Cabana ends up winning the match with his finishing move called the Billy Goat's Curse, one that I haven't seen yet. It's basically a reverse Boston Crab, and Lee Johnson taps. Another squash match, so C+ is the grade, but it was a lot of fun. The next match was Kylan King versus Penelope Ford, and this match was really based on jaw-jacking and people saying really funny things throughout. The best example being the quote near the very beginning. Penelope Ford takes off her ring, and Sabian's like, "See this ring?" He says, "See that? Daddy did good," and I just thought that was hilarious. You could tell that he was like waiting for that line to be delivered, and he like looks so smug about it. He was also saying a lot of stuff throughout the match. Kylan also, like early on, was saying a lot of like really interesting things, really gassing herself up, I guess. However, it was a backspring cutter by Penelope Ford that ended the match very quick. C+ grade because it was a squash, but Kylan looks pretty good with her selling. I think that she has a decent future if she continues with this position, I guess, and making herself look good through defeat. Next match was the main event of Dark, and it was Shawn Dean and Alan Angels versus the Best Friends. OC comes out messing with the lights in the fog. It was hilarious, by the way. There was one point when I don't remember exactly what OC did, but OC did something, and Excalibur was like, "He's corpsed, send for the man," and like that's a Botchamania reference. I absolutely love Excalibur for doing that. I'm expecting on the next Botchamania I watch, if they conclude that, then Matthew is going to be like, "Thanks Excalibur, your money's in the mail," or whatever, because he's done that in the past. Ends up being a very obvious squash match, surprisingly. Best Friends hit strong zero, get the win. I think they hit it on Alan Angels, which is a shame because Alan Angels is my preferred of the two, and I would have rather seen Shawn Dean take the pinfall there so that Alan looks stronger, but he still went toe-to-toe with Trent Beretta throughout majority of this match in strikes and stuff. Obviously not doing much damage to him because it's Trent, but still went toe-to-toe with him, looked brave and strong throughout it. Both of them are very good, and I hope that because they can sell well, because they can both do a lot when they show their offense, even though they didn't get to show it here, that they both have, you know, really good careers coming up into the future, and that they don't get discouraged for the fact that their records are so low in AEW, that they're losing so much. I hope that they realize that they are doing amazing work in here, and they're getting over by losing, even if they do lose 10 matches in a row. Even, like, it's crazy. So this grade could have been higher. I was thinking between a C plus and a B minus, because it all averaged out to between the two, and I would have given it a B minus if and only if the Peter Avalon and Brandon Cutler stuff happened later on in the card, because it was so early on in the card, and there was 4 matches in a row that were just straight squash matches that weren't, like, storytelling wise appealing. I had to take that into consideration, so I'm giving it a C plus. But I did want to give it a B minus. I think that the show was fairly decent, and it's only lacking because currently it's a lot of squash matches, and matches that are very obvious what the direction is going to be. So then we move over to AEW Dynamite. We are 20 minutes into the video. I'm hoping to make this only about a 20-minute thing as well. Didn't want to have to go this long, but here we are. So it starts off with an inner circle segment. They're talking about, like, how they have shirts bought for the Stampede Champions thing, sort of like how the World Series in Super Bowl stuff happens, mainly the Super Bowl because it's in a, you know, football stadium. But they basically, like, okay, well, what are we going to do with all these? And it's just like a single box that they're talking about, and then they show a bunch of boxes within this, like, truck that they were like, oh, we actually have all these too. I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. But because it wasn't really, like, super long, it doesn't affect the grade, but I did feel like it was long enough to deserve a grade for itself. So standalone, it is a B grade. Next, there was an Elite segment where 5 members of the Elite, or 4, I guess, plus Matt Hardy, were talking. And so it was Hangman, Kenny, the Bucks, and Matt Hardy. They were talking about their match coming up with Young Bucks and Matt Hardy, and Hangbega, as people have been calling them, with Hangman and Omega, you know, combined. They both leave. Obviously, Hangman starts leaving first, but then Omega leaves with him. And it looks like the two of them are actually, like, developing a really nice bond between the two of them. I actually am interested to see where this goes, because maybe he won't turn on him after all. Maybe the two of them will go off on their own, and Kenny, even though he's, like, one of the main people of the Elite, will finally fulfill his destiny and destroy the Elite by not being part of it anymore. That would be insane. Then they have Matt Hardy change into, like, an extreme version of himself. He's like, okay, well, cool, we'll go out like this, and they go out to his music. It's a B grade. You know, it's a very interesting take on how it is. They tell a little bit of a story going into the match, and tell a little bit of a story about what's going on with the Elite mentally and psychologically. I think that's pretty cool. So what I'm doing now is taking the promos that happen before matches and tacking on a little bit of extra points to the match, and I've developed a grade of how this works, a grading scale. So promos will be getting a little bit of grade to the match that happens after them if they're connected, or I'll be giving their grade that they get to the worst match of the night, so we can balance things out a little bit. So this gives on a 0.5 grade average to the next match, and I'll explain what that means when we get to the grading of it. So the first match of the night is Private Party, Joey Janela versus the Young Bucks and Matt Hardy. It's a nice spot fest, exactly how you want to start the show off, so it ends up getting a very high grade, partially as a result of that, partially as a result of the promo, and partially as a result of the ending. So there were a lot of back and forth counters, both of them very smart counters from everybody involved. Nick Jackson super kicked the Blade, I guess, when trying to hit Janela, and ref didn't see this because of Matt Jackson, but Blade and Butcher started, like, beating him up as a result of that. This then continued into the aftermath of the match, which I'll get to in a sec. Matt Hardy DDTs both of the Private Party members, and then after that side effects Janela. So he has them. He has both Private Party members in DDTs. One's a reverse, one's a regular. Takes them both out. Side effect. And then he hits a moonsault onto all 3 of them, and only gets a 2. But eventually Bucks hit more bang for your buck and get the win, and then Butcher and the Blade come out and attack the Young Bucks. But then probably the spot of the night, and what really made me pop the hardest, and is probably what this show will be remembered for, and one of the reasons why it's going to end up getting such a higher grade at the end of it all than what it maybe deserves. FTR, or the Revolt, or whatever they're going to go by. I think it's going to be the Revolt, but they were called FTR throughout this. They come out to help and basically stop the Butcher and the Blade from beating up on the Young Bucks. But then there's like a stare down. It's like, okay, well, these two are obviously going to meet in the future. Who's going to go after Butcher and the Blade first? Is it going to be QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes? Is it going to be FTR? Is FTR and Young Bucks going to go at it? Are the Young Bucks going to go at it with BBB? I have no clue yet. But it was a good match. And because of the ending, because of the promo, I bumped it up 1.5 slots. I originally was going to put it as a B grade because it was a decent match, but not super long, so not much to grade on. But because of the 0.5 that I tacked on for the promo prior to it, that would have bumped it up to a B plus because I would round up. One letter grade would be 1 point, I guess. One deviation within the letter grades. So from a B minus to a B is 1, B to B plus 1, that kind of thing. And then I round up at the end of it. And then because of the amazing ending, I gave it an entire bump up. So it then went from a B plus to an A minus, and that's again with the rounding. So anyway, then they had a commercial break, and now I also have a manner of judging this. If it's a commercial break in an area that I deem to be smart and well used, it will get a full point. And those full points will add up to the amount of points that happen with commercial breaks. So if there's 9 commercial breaks, as there were in this episode, then each point that they get will then go to how well the commercial break thing is, and then that will be added on to the ending for just flow of the overall show. So there was a first commercial break right after this match, gets a full point because it's in a fairly reasonable spot. Next match is Brian Cage versus Lee Johnson. Lee Johnson was the man who was thrown out by Archer at Double or Nothing, and wow, okay. Yeah, I'm surprised that I didn't remember that and feel bad. Anyway, Moxley came out for Cage's match to do commentary because he's trying to scout. Cage attacks immediately and very quickly dispatches of Lee Johnson with a drill call, which is basically a Steiner screwdriver. I'm not a huge fan of it. I much prefer Weapon X, and because of that, and because of how shaky the drill claw was, even though this was a quick squash match, it will not be getting a C+. It will get just a C, because I'm not a huge fan of the drill claw. It was shaky. The match was way too short. Anyway, Tazin cuts a promo on Mox for Fyter Fest, and he uses the "beat him if you can, survive if he lets you" moniker, which was what he used back when he wrestled. So it's a very much a passing of the torch moment, and I thought that was pretty neat. But it didn't change my overall opinion of the match, and the grade stays the same as a result. And then there was another commercial break. This one's also getting a full point. It made sense because there was a very important storyline thing that happened. I think that there's a little bit too quick of a period between those two breaks, but they had 9 breaks to fit in, so in the end it made sense, I guess. Then Britt Baker comes out, talks about her injury, has basically a rules of being a role model segment. She comes out in a wheelchair that says role model on it. That was funny. The rule this time is don't hurt the role model. She thinks that there was a 3-on-1 conspiracy where Sheeta, Statlander, and Rose all teamed together to injure her. Okay. She also tells Tony, and I'm quoting here so this doesn't go to the counter for swearing, to get the fuck out. She does this off mic, but you can hear it very audibly still, and I love that. It was hilarious. Anyway, so her main point at the end of all of this is not just that there's a 3-on-1 conspiracy, it's that all of these people have been working with Aubrey Edwards to try and get her out. And as a result of all of this, she's just like, well, it's okay because I'm not going to be down and out for the count. I'll see you guys at All Out whenever that happens. It looks like it's going to be September 5th. That's what's scheduled, but we'll see. It was a fun promo. She made me hate her guts and got the job done to let us know when she'd be back, while also giving her motivation as a heel. So it's going to be an A grade. It's exactly what you want in a promo, but because it's a promo, I'm not going to give it a full grade. I typically only want to grade matches for these types of things because that's the thing that I think is the most important. But because promos are also very important and they tell stories, I then add those grades on. So if you get an A grade, you get +1. If you get a B grade, you get +0.5. If you get a C grade, +0. D grade, -0.5. F grade, -1. Any iteration of the A's and the B's will get the exact same thing. So B- is also 0.5, B+ also 0.5, and so on and so forth. Then there was another commercial break, and again, very quick commercial break successions. I'm not a huge fan of that, but because it's in a smartly timed area, it makes sense. It's only going to be a point. Then they have an action figure commercial in the episode, which I wish that they would just do those in the commercial break. I don't want to see commercials into a commercial. I'm fine with it, like doing it with AEWshop.com because like I kind of want to get shop stuff eventually, but I don't want to get action figures anymore. So I don't think that it's smart to do it here. You know, get your deal with TNT and put it in the commercial break, please. Anyway, then there was an Inner Circle interview that's interrupted by OC. He just sort of like stumbles onto it, but it's a very short thing, so I'm not going to be able to grade it. There's not enough to grade there, but it does lead into something that happens later in the night. The next match is Hikaru Shida versus Christy Janes. Christy Janes is rather impressive in this match for selling purposes more so than anything. She doesn't really get a whole lot going on, but she does impress me throughout this because it is a squash match. Going to give it a B- grade. There was a couple things that happened within it. A very like hell of a forearm by Shida in the knee strike, but it only got 2. She hits the Falcon Arrow. She does the deal, and this time actually does it and gets the win. But earlier in the match, there's also a quote-unquote 10 million yen lift, or 10 million yen knee lift. I guess a $100,000 knee lift could work, but I think it'd be better to call it the 100 million yen knee lift if you're going to go with that, because then it's like the $1 million knee lift. Either way, I'm not a huge fan of that. JR, you swung and you missed there. Way to shoot your shot, though. Way to try and name a thing, but don't do it again. At least not like that. I don't think that would have worked out very well. Mainly because it's just a mouthful, but there's also just the idea of like, okay, well, couldn't you have just called it like the Holy Shida knee lift or something like that? Anyway, there was also just like a nice moonsault that Janes did that she ended up missing, but she sold it well. It looked really good, and I liked it. It was pretty good. So B- is the grade. Then there's another commercial break, which pissed me off, and I was going to take points away from it, but there was a picture-in-picture during this commercial break where it showed Hangman and Adam Page and Omega drinking. I loved this. They eventually noticed the camera start bickering about it, and then just like, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. And they go back to drinking milk and alcohol, and I was going to give it a full like extra point because of that, but it loses half a point because I'm pissed off at the amount of commercial breaks back to back to back. I also miss these guys a lot, so because it was a good thing during the picture-in-picture, because I missed them, I felt like giving it a full point because it's a well-timed commercial break, gets the normal point, but it's also pissing off how many there are, so it loses a half point. Anyway, net gain of 0.5, so I'll tally that up at the end. Then they go to a TNT Championship segment with Mike Tyson, at the end of the Cody Lance Archer match. It then leads into Cody talking, and Cody talking is, good, so it's fairly decent promo. I still am not a big fan of the TNT Championship. I need to see the gold plating. I also hate the side plates. I think it's the Turner House, but it's not for me, that particular look. He talks about why he likes Tom Brady. He's like, it's not because I'm from that area. It's not because I want to go back to that area. I don't think that Connecticut will have me back. Gotta mark that one off for another shot at WWE, which is highly unnecessary. But you go, Cody. It works in your promos. But he's like, no, it's actually because Tom Brady was not first picked, and I was also not first picked. I was actually number 4th. He doesn't actually say that. He just sort of like shows 4, which could be playing with the people that think he could have done a 4 Horsemen thing with Shawn Spears, or could still. I think that was, very much intentional. But if he was the 4th person picked, I'm assuming it was behind Omega, the Bucks, and then it was him. No idea though. But then he says, I am a fighting champion. I am now laying down the gauntlet. It's an open challenge, and I will defend this title every week if I have to. So it's probably going to be like the TV championship, but he doesn't defend it this week, which upsets me, because if you're going to do that, you need to then have somebody come out and fight you, either later on in the match, later on in the night, or right then. And what I would have liked to have seen is have him versus one of the people that didn't have a match. Ray Phoenix, for example, would have been an amazing match. Anyway, there's other people that also probably could have done that. I'm blanking on who. Let me give a quick gander on who was on Dark. Possibly Brandon Cutler. Brandon Cutler would have been a fairly decent option. I would have been perfectly fine with Joey Janela coming out and having a match with him. In fact, I would have been also rather fine with any of the people that were in the tournament being taken out and having a match with him and placing somebody else into the tournament. Anyway, so let's get back to where I was. So because it was an A grade, gets a +1 to the lowest match. Then there's a commercial break. There's a lot of them, pissing me off. -0.5. So now we're back to net neutral, but it was placed in a decently placed area, so whatever, same amount of points. The next match is Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc versus SCU, and the winner faces Hang Mega next week. The best friends, because they won the championship opportunity at Double or Nothing. They'll be going for the title shot at Fyter Fest. So whatever that's worth. We have new quote unquote number 1 contenders being declared tonight. I don't particularly like that, but you do you, I guess. The same match will same night on Fyter Fest will also be when Cage and Moxley happens. So there was a bit of a sloppy looking portion to the early going in this match, but nothing was really dangerous. But I did have to take it down a peg or two because of that. There's a lot of good heel work by Sabian and Havoc. I'm really liking the duo. The last match on Dark really cemented it for me, but I saw this match prior to that one that made me start thinking about it a little bit more. Then they had a commercial break. It was not picture-in-picture. It was happening during the match, so that loses points, and also doesn't gain full credit points. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue. Well, no, it does gain full credit points, just not all of them. It loses 0.5, so it's a 0.5 anyway. They also missed the punt kick thing that they've been doing that I love, and you don't do that. I was considering taking a full point away from it, but I felt like that was a bit too harsh. Then Sky gets a nice hot tag, and this makes me want to see him as an AEW World Champion. I really think that it would be amazing. I really like Sky. Scorpio Sky is amazing. Anyway, the surprising victor in this match is Savick. They do the Dropkick Michinoku thing, and it looks absolutely devastating. This is the first time I've seen it. It looks much better in this match than it did on in Dark. And they ended up getting the win. Thanks to that ending and thanks to that move, it ends up saving the points that I would have taken away from it, and ends up being a B match. I really liked it. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst on the card, but it was very good. Then there was an MJF promo going into the Battle Royale. So it's an MJF promo, really good. He talks with Wardlow. It's like, you know what to do, what happens if it's just the two of us, right? And Wardlow's like, but, and he's like, no buts. I'm just kidding with you, but it's okay. But Wardlow looks pissed, and this is leading into something in the future, I'm sure. But because it's, really good promo, it's MJF, A grade, +1 to the next match. So it's the TNT Battle Royal. Match starts with OC, beginning to enter, but Luther's attacking somebody in the match. I don't remember who. Just biting the shit out of him. Shoot, I didn't mean to swear. Whatever, dude. I'll count these later. But yeah, the match starts. Proud and Powerful. I saw PP, so I thought Private Party. Proud and Powerful come out and beat the crap out of him, and he's just not in the match for the majority of it. Anyway, Luther was going after someone earlier, like I mentioned. He eventually squares up with Luchasaurus after kneeing Marco in the stomach. He then gets chokeslammed out by Luther. Glad he was the first eliminated. I was not really seeing anything of substance from him in that match so far, and I don't think it would have really been the place to start. So, Sonny then Cabana were also eliminated in quick succession before we land into another commercial break, which is number 8. It was picture in picture though. Cutler has a nice save throughout it, but then Cutler and Avalon eliminate each other in picture. I was tempted to take a points away from that because that is unacceptable in my opinion, but it was picture in picture, so I did get to see it, so I'll leave it as is. Gets full credit. Marco then, with an amazing Hurricanrana, takes out CD, and it looked like it was going to be CD like power bombing him out. Very interesting elimination, but then of course Wardlow throws Marco out onto CD, so like really doesn't matter. JR ends up calling MJF a dick throughout this, again quoting, so not to the counter. But then he quickly corrects this to Richard, which he had been using throughout the entire night. I think that's hilarious. I don't know if anyone else caught it while it happened, but it was great. Anyway, Luchasaurus and Billy Gunn start going at it. Luchasaurus was going at it with Wardlow because they have that whole beef, but then Billy Gunn, being another big dude, testosterone flowing kind of thing, they both get eliminated by Wardlow and MJF once they're trying to eliminate each other. Perfect, cool. OC finally comes in and helps out Jungle Boy, because it's Jungle Boy, MJF, Wardlow, and OC left in the match. But of course it's Orange Cassidy, so like he's not going to be too much to deal with, so he ends up being dispatched fairly quickly, but not out of the match. He ends up being like held down by Wardlow or held back by Wardlow, and MJF's about to hit him with the Dynamite Does Ring, but then he dodges it, goes into like 5th gear. But when he dodges it, the ring hits Wardlow in the face and knocks him loopy. MJF then gets like sent off the ropes and by Orange Cassidy into Jungle Boy, and Jungle Boy throws him out really high, like he's way up in the air, and eliminates MJF. And then the two of them, Orange Cassidy and Jungle Boy, eliminate Wardlow together, and it's an unlikely duo in the final 2. Wow, I would love to see either one of these people go up against Cody. But even though OC is trying and he might win this whole thing, Jungle Boy is too good for this night, and Hurricanrana's OC to the 4 for the win. Battle Royals aren't typically my thing, and the early portions of this match made me think the same thing about Battle Royals, but the portions after and during the commercial break changed my mind, because I really liked the Peter Avalon Brandon Cutler stuff, and how like they both cost each other the win. Because I really liked what they did with MJF and Wardlow. MJF still, hasn't been pinned or submitted throughout this, so even though he lost, it wasn't really a loss in his eyes, because it's not a singles match, which is also interesting because he's lost, to my knowledge, all of the like multi-man matches that he's been in where he has a chance of losing in ways other than getting pinned or submitted. I think that's interesting. I think he's won tag team matches though, but regardless. But because of the action from the break to the end, it was pretty good. Gets a B grade. Then they do an announcement of next week's tag title and TNT title matches. Some other promo stuff that I just didn't have the energy to care about at that point, because it was just getting overwhelming for me of seeing all of these ads, and I just was done with it. Then they showed the highlights of the Stadium Stampede, which were pretty good. I was a big fan of that. Then they had their final commercial break, and I timed it to see an idea of like how much these commercial breaks were taking from this show, and this was 2 minutes and 30 seconds roughly, and I assumed that was the average for what these commercial breaks were. Not a fan of that. Anyway, Vicky Guerrero comes out to begin the pep rally, and on her like placard, the thing that shows her name and all that, it also says "Get your earplugs ready," and then she screams, so it's perfect. I love that. They had the cheerleaders from Double or Nothing help out to like make the pep rally feel like an actual pep rally. Not a huge fan of using cheerleaders in any capacity. It's just not my thing. I think the cheerleaders, if they enjoy what they do, cool. But I also think that there's just a lot of really unsavory aspects about cheerleading as a whole, especially when used in this capacity, because it's, you know, very clearly being used as an eye candy kind of thing, and I don't think that that's proper and right. If they're doing it because they actually want to give these girls a chance to like show their style and stuff, cool, I'm fine with that. But I'm just, something about it is too archaic for me, not my jam. Anyway, there's a bunch of shit that happens. The pep rally table looks absolutely pitiful because it is pitiful. They have like a half-eaten cheese platter. We later find out that that's probably been eaten. It's not really said or anything, but I'm assuming it was eaten, and the bubbly that was like hidden under stuff was drunk by Mike Tyson, because this was all to like build up for an idea of Mike Tyson versus Chris Jericho. And while there's a lot of stuff that happened in it, a really dope-ass poem that was absolute trash, but the fact that he quotes Taken in it also made it funny, but the fact that it was trash on purpose, in my opinion, made me love it even more. Hager wrote this poem, said the poem. Anyway, really good stuff. A lot of, you know, dumb stuff happens throughout it. I do suggest watching the highlight when it comes out on TNT's show, which probably will happen before this video goes up, but regardless. Then Tyson comes out, his crew and all of them are just like posing and shit. Tyson steals the mic from Jericho. It feels clear that he just wants to go off the cuff, but Jericho's trying to hold him back from doing so. Okay, cool. Then all hell breaks loose, and the two groups go at it. Everybody from the backstage has to stop them. It was a very good overall segment as a promo until it started to look like they were building into a Mike Tyson versus Chris Jericho match. I'm not particularly a fan of that. If they have it as a proxy war, then I'm okay with that. It could work out, but I mentioned this with Jake the Snake versus Arn Anderson, and I'll mention it here. Old wrestlers and older celebrity kind of things happening just for the sake of nostalgia doesn't make me happy. Maybe Tyson can go and he'll prove me wrong. I know Chris Jericho can go, but I don't like the idea of that happening. So it took away from me decent amount. It would have been an A+ because I loved everything that happened. I don't feel like going through it all because I ruined the magic of what happened by explaining it, I guess. But because of that prospect upsetting and scaring me, it gets an A-. But because that is an A style grade, it gives +1 to the worst match. So the commercial grade, because 19% of the stuff was commercials, and I wasn't quite happy about that, I considered taking even more points off. However, because I was feeling generous this time around for the first ever time of using this actual grading style, I gave the full credits for all the things that deserved the full credits. The ones that lost half points lost their half points and stuck with that, and it ended up being an 8 out of 9 for total points earned, which is a B+, 88%, I believe. So that gives a +0.75 overall. For this particular thing, I decided to do that instead of keep it at the 0.5. In the end, it's fairly similar. When I originally had done this, there was a 0.25 somewhere in there, so I was like, this makes it so there's no rounding errors. So either way, it still just rounds up like it would have with the 0.5. There's not much of a difference. So the overall grade that I give it, this promo heavy show, but because the promos were good, they bumped up grades a lot. It's a B+ grade show. I don't grade those like typical matches because the matches are more important in my eyes. So the fact that the show was so heavy on promos degrades the overall value if those matches don't keep pace with the promos, and tonight they didn't. Only having 5 matches. I know they had 8 overall. No, they had 10. They had 10 over on Dark, but even then, 5 matches on your show, like the main show, is too few, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of having a minimum of 7 in this day and age. 5 could have worked back in the day, 2005, 2006 era. It doesn't work as much anymore. I'm more of a fan of 7 to 10 matches on your card. 10 being if you have a lot of singles matches and some of them being squash matches. 7 being, typical tag team squash, regular singles match formula. I understand that there's a battle royale and that should take away from it a little bit, but it's not particularly my style to have it then take all the place with promos. Anyway, B plus grade for the show. You got a C plus grade for Dark, so the two average out to be roughly around a B minus. I'll call it a B for the sake of conversation because Dynamite's more important anyway. So yeah, that was AEW and AEW Dark. Sorry, Dynamite and Dark this week. As far as BTE goes, there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happened on that as well. I didn't take any notes on it this week. I'll be doing that again next week. I will be doing that for the first time rather next week, and incorporating that into the Dark segments and talking about that. So it would be like a BTE and Dark lumped into one, and then I'll discuss Dynamite. There has been a decent amount of referencing to FTR prior to them debuting. One of the things that happened this week, for example, was the Young Bucks dressed up in the costumes that were reportedly going to be given to the Revival when they were in WWE still, but then they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that, and they left. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But other than that, a lot of stuff about Stadium Stampede and social distancing jokes and all that. It was a pretty decent BTE this week. Anyway, my name's the JackM13. It is now 12:40. I very much despise doing it this late, but that's what I had to do this time around. I hope to, in the future, have this stuff done before 11 o'clock so that I can go to bed at a much more reasonable time. But thank you for joining me. At the very least, I'm signing out, and I'll catch you guys later.